Good morning and welcome to Newday Saturday edition. My name is Abna Tebi. We are live on TV3 here in Accra. We're also live on our various media platforms, including our social media pages, TV3 News, on Facebook. We are also streaming live on 3news.com and GhanaWeb.com. As usual, we'll be with you just about 10 minutes to the hour of 10 when conversations are brought to a close on the show. We encourage you to send in your comments via our WhatsApp line 050-060-7070. It will be displayed at the bottom of your screen shortly, so just look out for that and do send in your comments when the conversations begin. Today, we have a number of topics to discuss as usual. We will, on the show today, revisit the discussion over the ECG concession agreement under the MCC Compact 2 to determine whether a strong case was made this week for private sector participation in the ECG. Now, whilst we await for some finality to be brought to the concession agreement, the very issues motivating the private sector participation, or the call for private sector participation in the ECG, continues to linger, and indeed this week manifested itself in various ways. Now, this week we heard from the Minister of Energy that the ECG has a capital deficit of about 2 billion Ghana cedis. Now, when you hear this, you would think that perhaps all the ECG needs is money because they lack it. But wait until you hear what the U.S. Embassy has to say about the ECG. Now, the U.S. Embassy claims that for 2 years now, the ECG has not taken money from the embassy by way of payments for electricity consumed. And the embassy has rather been chasing the ECG for bills, but to no avail. Now, this assertion was perhaps to confirm an earlier assertion by the Minister of Energy, Mr. Boakye Jako, to the effect that the inability of ECG to improve its balance sheet is because that is the ECG, has failed to collect debts owed it by entities such as the U.S. Embassy and telecom giant MTN. Is this the latest argument being urged on the people of Ghana in support of the privatization of the ECG? Our panelists will be looking into this to bring some clarity on the way forward. Of course, we'll look at the 8 alleged members of Delta Force discharged for lack of evidence. Now, the alleged members of the Delta Force who were alleged to have barged into and disrupted court proceedings at the KMA Circuit Court in Kumasi earlier on in the year to release 13 other members of the group who were standing trial for assaulting the Ashanti Regional Security Coordinator have been discharged. Now, this is to say that the state dropped the charges against the 8 accused persons. And the reason for their discharge is that there was no evidence to secure a conviction on the charges leveled against the 8 accused persons. Now, the charges we're talking about here are disturbance of court, resisting arrest, and rescuing 13 persons in lawful custody. Now, the news of the discharge obviously has left a bad taste in the mouths of many Ghanaians. Now, the government, in a reaction to this public outcry, or perhaps to the announcement of the discharge itself, says it was not consulted by the state attorney in Kumasi before the decision to have the 8 accused persons discharged was taken. Now, the Attorney General, Madam Gloria Ekufo, has in the meantime ordered an investigation into the circumstances under which the Chief State Attorney at the Kumasi office of the Attorney General discharged the accused persons, or advised for the discharge of the accused persons for lack of evidence. Again, we shall be looking at the issues arising from this development. Also, we'll be looking at the termination of the appointment of the medical director at the Accra Regional Hospital. Now, the medical doctor of the Accra Regional Hospital, Dr. Thomas Anaba, has been relieved of his post. And Dr. Anaba is reported to have been appointed in February 2016, and his appointment was to have lasted for a period of 4 years, expiring in the year 2020. And we are told, or it's reported, that his appointment also had the option to be reviewed, or he had the option to reapply upon the expiration of the 4-year term. Now, it's unclear why the appointment was terminated, but speculations are rife, as usual, that it was motivated by some political considerations. We're not here to deal with speculations, but facts. So we shall be looking at the issues arising from the termination of Dr. Anaba's appointment and what the possible fallouts would be. Would also look at the minority and the fact that it has petitioned the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission this week in respect of the $2.5 million bond that was issued recently by the Ministry of Finance. These are the issues we've lined up for discussion this morning. We'll take a break. When we come back, I will introduce the panelists for today's discussions and the conversations will begin. We'll be right back shortly. Back, you are watching Newday Saturday edition live on TV3. We're also live on our Facebook page, TV3 News, also streaming live on 3news.com and on GhanaWeb.com. Let me quickly introduce the panelists for today's discussions and we move on to our conversations. From my far left, we have Mr. Joe Jackson. He is an economic analyst and a director of business operations at Dalex Finance. Next is Mr. Kwame Jantua. He is a member of the CPP, also the CEO of African Energy Consortium, and he's also the vice chairperson of PIAC. Next is Nana Fedua Ajiman Oforiata. He is the second vice chairperson of the NPP in the Eastern region. Good morning, gentlemen. It's good to have you here. Let me announce also that we're expecting a representative from the NDC, so once he gets in, we will do the honors and introduce him as well. Our WhatsApp number again is 050-060-7070. It will be displayed on your screens very shortly, so please look out for it and send in your contributions as we go. So we will start off, but again, let me reiterate the number 050-060-7070. So we'll start off today's discussions with, I think, the very hot issue, which is the discharge of the 8 members of the Delta Force who were discharged during the week for lack of evidence. It's obviously created, excuse me, a public outcry as a number of Ghanaians have come out to, condemn the decision by the AG's office not to continue with, excuse me, with the case. Now, briefly, let me have your general opinion on this occurrence. I'll start with you, Mr. Kwame Jantua, and then we go into the nuances of this because we are looking at a criminal prosecution and there are very, important aspects we need to look at. But Mr. Jantua, your opinion on this generally?
Abna, thank you. Good morning to my fellow panelists and good morning to our viewers. I think for me, the mere act was a travesty of justice. That from the word go, such a thing shouldn't happen with our law courts. Our law courts are a place where everybody should have confidence in, especially investors who come and invest in this country. They would need to know and they would need to see that in times of any arbitration, the courts are well instituted to handle any cases that come up. Now, if individuals, Ghanaians, irrespective of whether they join a club or they don't join a club, can infiltrate a courtroom and cause mayhem, then that is a real travesty of justice. There are many factors to this case, which I guess we're going to interrogate.
Right.
And so I hope, and my hope is that we conclude in such a way that this thing never happens again. The court is sacrosanct. Just remember, is it 2012 when the MPP took the elections to court? If the court wasn't there, what would have happened? And so it's an institution that we don't mess with, an institution that we don't joke with, and it's an institution where laws are exhibited, and through the laws we're able to get judgments and we're able to get conclusions. So I would hope we can get to the bottom of this. I would hope the right things will be done, and I would hope that all those involved, especially the authorities involved, would be able to come to a good conclusion, and then we move on.
Very well. Mr. Joe Jackson.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, for me, I have to differentiate between the act that took place and the prosecution of whoever the alleged culprits were. The same way that we can condemn a murder for being heinous and outrageous, yet at the same time insist that a murderer goes through the court processes. Well, likewise, the act itself of disrupting the court must be condemned in no uncertain terms. There are no caveats. There's nothing about it. You just have to condemn it. Unfortunately, the irony of the situation is that the culprits, for all our own sanity, must receive the benefit of the processes that they tried to disrupt. So whilst you can condemn this act, you've got to take this whole prosecution thing and separate it from the act itself. Otherwise, we will be guilty of the same things that we're condemning on the side of the perpetrators who disrupted the court. The court must be allowed to work. The processes must be allowed to work. Now, the only thing we can interrogate at this moment is whether did the processes work? Who was at fault? Was it the AG or the chief state attorney in the regional or the Ashanti regional office? Ashanti regional office who did the wrong thing, or was it the police or the other things? But truly, the act itself must be and listen, vigilante groups have the potential of destroying this country. And just look around and look at things that have happened in neighboring countries. Nigeria is a good example where politicians are maintaining their own armed brigades, etc. And look at how much disruption it causes to the country. So but we as a nation must say that we have rules for which we apply to anybody who offends. And those rules cannot be thrown away just because we condemn the act that took place. Right.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because really this is a criminal prosecution, and with criminal prosecution there are, if you like, two major players. You're looking at the police and then the AG's office. The police to do the investigative work, then based on whether they are able to establish a prima facie case, prefer a charge against the accused persons. Then the docket is forwarded to the AG's office, depending on the nature of the offense, for advice. So clearly, with this particular instance, given the public interest and all, it was forwarded to, the AG's office for advice. Then the advice was given. Now we are hearing that there was insufficient evidence to move on. So the chief state attorney advised that let's drop it because we can't secure a conviction on the evidence as you have presented. So indeed, you're raising very valid points there, Mr. Jackson. It's an equation. If the police is unable to feed a certain kind of, evidence to the AG's office for them to, prosecute, or even if it's the police to prosecute, because you do know that the police is able to prosecute on behalf of the AG's, yes, so they can do that. So the question is, how do we balance the equation in terms of feeding evidence to be able to proceed with the case? And that's what you're raising here. We need to look at all those dimensions.
Before you're coming, Abuna, just a point of order. You indicated that the police will send the evidence to the AG's office.
Not the evidence, the docket, which includes everything they've been able to compile.
The docket, sorry, the docket. Let's try and differentiate. Because this is in Kumasi, the docket won't be sent to the AG's office in Accra.
No. The AG's office being looked at as the AG's office is decentralized for purposes of operations.
I understand it, but probably people listening to us might not be able to differentiate between the two.
Right.
So we are not talking that the docket has to come to Accra.
Not at all, because the AG has representatives in the regions.
Let's define that.
Yes,
so that
that's
people
important.
understand.
Good.
Now, so it's a point of information, not order.
Well,
I get it.
Can the lawyers allow the rest of us to get on
Yes, carry on.
with this discussion, please?
Yes, please.
So the point is this. What we need to interrogate is who was at fault. Was it the police who did a shoddy job? Was it the Attorney General's office in the Ashanti region who did a poor job? But what we have, and there's a very, there's also another distinction, which is this. They were not acquitted and discharged. They were just discharged. We reserve the right to be able to rearrest them and do the right thing. It is sad that the wrong thing was done, and if anybody is found culpable in doing the wrong thing, we should go after them to the full limit of the law, because of how much we condemn that act that took place. But let's not mix the act and the condemnation of the act with the process of prosecuting those who undertook the act.
Joe, you need to define when you actually say the wrong thing. Because if you say the wrong thing, then you're bringing everybody in that courtroom, including the judge.
No,
very well.
I'm not talking about the wrong thing.
Hold your thoughts on that. We need to take a break.
The wrong thing in terms
Mr. Jackson and Mr.
prosecuting them.
So I'm saying
we need to take a break.
It makes it sound as if everybody.
When we come back, we continue with these things. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Newday Saturday edition. We're live on TV3 in Accra. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. Also in Accra, we're streaming live on the internet at 3news.com, also on GhanaWeb.com, and on our Facebook page, TV3 News. We'll be going back to the panel, but quickly let me introduce the Honorable Kweku Ricketts Hagan. He is the MP for Cape Coast South constituency and held or served in various capacities in the immediate past John Dramani Mahama government, including Deputy Minister for Trade and also Deputy Minister for Finance. You're welcome, Honourable.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll pick up from where we left off just before the break. Mr. Joe Jackson, I think you were rounding up on your submissions.
Yes.
I would come back to you to do that, yes.
Just to do a quick recap, I was just clearly stating that we should differentiate between how much we condemn the act that took place from whether there was any wrongdoing on the part of those who were responsible for prosecuting the alleged participants.
Right.
And it's a very important distinction, because otherwise all we do is to go over and over again and we're beating a dead horse. I think on both sides of the divide, we are all agreed that, listen, vigilante groups could cause this country, could bring this country to its knees.
Right.
And it has to be condemned in no uncertain way. Now, the act of dismantling the vigilante groups also cannot be done in a way in which it is, in a sense, illegal. And I worry when I hear calls on the president to intervene in a matter in court.
Right.
Right? Truly, let's look at what is happening in the US right now. Right? The President Trump is in trouble because he's alleged to have even just asked the FBI to slow down on an investigation. Likewise, if we heard that the president or a minister or anybody in the party was trying to hold the police back, we should hold that person to the reckoning. Right? With regards to the Delta Force, if the police didn't do a good job, we must ask, were they influenced? Or was it just our Ghana police that we lambast that they do a bad job every now and then? That's fine. Did the AG the AG's office in the Ashanti region do a bad job? If not, don't hold them responsible. So for me,
that distinction should be
clear and made.
Very well. I will move on to Nana Fredria here. Basically, maybe you would want to react to some of the things that have been said so far, but also picking up from Mr. Jackson's submissions, I get a sense that yes, people are outraged. They're looking at the act as against what has happened, and basically they can't understand or fathom that you're letting them go, forgetting that these people are subject to the laws of Ghana, and there's a certain procedure that should be gone through. And at the heart of that procedure is the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. So there's a lot of nuances here. But isn't it the case that perhaps there's a certain level of mistrust of the people by the ruling class, that perhaps in the past, the ruling class has, refused or failed to punish or allow their own to be punished by reason of interference? So let me hear from you on this.
Very well. I just wanted to say that I noticed that the NDC representative, now embodied in Mr. Rickett Hagen, was in a comfortable lead and he came in last.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so that's just...
I don't think you're going to
by the by, okay.
It was just interesting that it happened that way. You come here, You've positioned what I've noticed on this table in the comments already, and even in your write-up to us. And in the write-up, you also spelt my name wrongly. The only property that nobody can take from me.
Well,
now,
has taken note of that. We will correct it, but we apologize for that.
And that issue is that we're pronouncing everybody guilty already, and just demanding that they should be prosecuted and thrown away or whatever it is that we think should happen to them. Who are we? Are we the courts? Are we dealing with what is real on the ground? What is it that Ghanaians want or should want on this matter? Is it about some NPP people who we should make sure that, I'm reading the points about the minority. I think it's shameful. As far as they are concerned, and as far as a lot of people are concerned, those people are definitely guilty. How can that be? Then what is the essence of the court, which we are even trying to protect? We're trying to protect them so that the truth comes out and then justice is delivered. You cannot position them to insist that whether it's truth or not, this is truth. And so they should just, and the issue is that we should finish the matter. That's not what is at stake. What is at stake is that change has come. We must change things. We must do things the right way. One, what happened in the courts? In the instance that has caused us, taken us to this point. And then we proceed from there. So yes, and in your question, you said that the fear is of
there's a certain mistrust, perhaps.
People by the ruling class, but I think you meant by the people of the ruling class.
Of the ruling class, sorry, yes.
Now, that mistrust, is it not justified? Even in the utterances of the minority on this matter, is it not justified? It's very justified because we're busy trying to politicize the matter, when this matter must end as a political matter and must continue as a legal matter in order for our society to become what we pray it is supposed to be. In other words, yes, the accusation is against Delta Force, who are associated with the NPP, which has formed a government. So yes, that one is a fact. No matter what me, Nana Fredria, whatever I want, the fact is that it is a fact. So, but the truth is also that it is not the first time that these types of things have happened.
Which is perhaps why there's a basis for that perceived
You see, so if people want things to happen in Ghana, so that fear of the people, by the people of the ruling class will reduce, if not totally removed. It's for us to tell ourselves the truth and work from that point. And the truth is that whether it's NPP or NDC or CPP or whoever, the issue is not about their political party, it's about that crime that purportedly was committed, for which we must deal with and seal so it doesn't happen again, because it has happened before in the past so many times. It's why that mistrust exists in the first place. So let us stop politicizing this thing. Its politics has reached a thing. Let's decide that it is over. And therefore, I say poo-poo the minorities' comments. Poo-poo anybody who's eager to point at the NPP. And let's deal with the substantive matter. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know enough about law. But whatever it is, let's look at those issues and raise them and work with them. And then from that point on, that's the beginning of the end of that mistrust, and therefore the beginning of the real change into the kind of society Ghana is looking for. Who are the minority talking for when they raise these funny issues that they raise? I find them very questionable. First of all, the first point of call is that where's their moral right? Because they are as guilty as the NPP on these matters. They are as guilty. And in some instances, they are worse. Because
but you see,
if we start arguing
about the
about
moral right, for me,
yeah.
it takes away from the discussion here, which is that because perhaps they themselves have done it in the past, they don't have the right to point out.
But then I also raise the point that when they are raising the questions, it should not be about things about the political aspect of it. Is it because the NPP is in power? That's a political statement. There's nothing legal about it. And therefore, it's an addition to that mistrust, which they themselves are adding to their creating. And that's my issue. My issue is that their moral right position comes up as a question because they're not raising the right questions in their query. If they were raising the right questions, what happened to the procedure? Why is it that the police can't give us clear answers? On what basis? The state attorney, did she raise issues based on fact? Mr. Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader, is he not a lawyer? You see, so we're talking about what will benefit Ghanaians and Ghana. So they are not dealing with that. They're dealing with their pain and whatever else. And that's, I have a moral position to say that because of what they've stated. Now,
briefly wrap up for me and let me move to...
Yeah, so for me, the big thing is this. We have a situation on our hands as Ghana. That situation is that every time there's a change of power, change of government, we get something like this. It comes and that change of power is not even necessarily democratic rule. Why? We can go to the so-called revolutionary era and look at all the things that have happened. All kinds of things. Can we, as Ghanaians, begin to eat away or erase that character in us and start working on having a solemn society, a respectful society, a society that appreciates that we're in a system that says that the fact that your party wins the authority to go into government does not authorize you to do as you please and all those things. How are we going to deal with that? And you know, I've hit on the minority. The media is not any less guilty on this
Well,
matter.
we'll come to that, but let me move on to
you see, when we go to yours, we'll come to that.
Definitely.
Would allow me to make a little interjection.
Little interjection, 30 seconds, and then I go to the honorable.
Listen, talking about moral rights, talking about, you said something. The Delta Force is affiliated with you.
That's it.
Then whatever you say, it's affiliated. It's your business.
I'm saying what
it's
is
your trouble. You guys
you're not dealing with the matter. When you do that, you're not dealing with the matter.
I am the one who says we should separate the event from
I'm saying the same thing. So you cannot play that.
But I'm saying that
you're not the only one who's saying that. I'm also saying the same thing.
You see, you can't blow smoke into the eyes of the.
Neither can you.
It's your organization.
Neither can you.
It's your organization.
You want to continue in that manner.
No, we don't. You want me to continue.
Let Mr. Jackson finish. Mr. Jackson,
no.
That's your responsibility.
And the way it is not only the NPP's responsibility.
Well, you are in power now.
You see,
okay, no,
that is why you
Mr.
politicize it.
Mr. Jantwa.
So what? So
disbanded.
Very well. But Mr. Jantwa.
Vigilantism in your party.
No, Kwame, that is an unfair comment because because you also assume that they are a signed organization in the thing.
But
see,
have
let's
you-
not
has
move
anybody
away.
said anything?
That's not a good comment.
Please.
Of course.
Has anybody?
That's also not very honest.
No.
So
let me
disband
move
it.
on,
That's also
please.
not
You
very
had your
honest.
piece.
That's
The two
also
of
not
you,
very
had your
honest.
piece.
But
Mr. Jantua
No,
and
that
Nana.
disbanded.
First of all,
We're
you know
moving
it's
on
not a very honest
to
comment.
Honorable
Disband
Rickett
it.
Hagan.
Because you know it's not an honest
Gentlemen,
comment on your part.
please
Disband it.
allow
We don't
Honorable
need it.
Rickett Hagan to make his
We don't need
submissions.
it in our
You've had your piece.
You're not being honest.
Honorable.
Kwame.
We don't need
We are
no
looking
politics.
at this situation, but also I think what's come up strongly here is that perhaps there is a certain, perceived mistrust between the people and the ruling class, as in, because of historical antecedents, people smell a rat anytime such a thing happens, that, well, perhaps something must have happened behind the scenes, that kind of situation. Is that a valid conclusion or assessment of the situation? Of course, you can give us the minority's position, but also I'd want you to touch on this.
Right. Thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers. And I'm sorry I haven't been able to join. We are in a hurry bandwagon, which is
But you're still in the comfortable.
You're always in a comfortable
which nobody
position,
knows
that's
where
right.
it's going, not even those who are driving it. And I'm quite happy this morning to hear that, well, maybe happy is not a word, but that, we have people on this panel who feel strongly about this issue.
Sure.
And like Joe did say earlier, if we don't deal with this vigilante issue, we will not be having a democracy. We will have a mobocracy, where the system will be run by mobs. What happened is really unbelievable, and I do agree with Joe that we should separate the issues and deal with them. It's a very serious matter. When this vigilante thing started, invisible forces, Delta Force, if this MPP government had dealt with it the way they should have earlier on, we probably wouldn't be where we are. No, we should not condone any vigilante group in any political party. Otherwise, we're going to go down a very slippery road, down the road. I find it very difficult that what happened is really a sort of a daylight robbery. Something that happened wasn't a robbery, well, close to it, to go and free, people who are supposed to be prosecuted. I think the case for the 8, and I'm not a lawyer too, but the case for the 8 is even much clearer than that of the 13. I mean,
How
the
so?
issue,
Because you're looking at a
as I said,
criminal prosecution.
Absolutely, I do
Right.
agree with
Which,
that. But
yeah.
from a layman's standpoint,
But
I
don't you
really
think that
find it
that
difficult
perception
to
perhaps should be
understand.
dispelled with?
I find it difficult to understand, and then we should not be apportioning blame whether police didn't do their work or did their work. There is no political will to prosecute this case. That is what it is. The Delta Force is really in bed with the NPP. They've got them to power. Whatever they did for them, I don't know, that they've become untouchable. That's what the issue is. And they just don't have the political will to prosecute this case. I mean, we have an attorney general. Any serious legal issue that happens in this country, whether it's bonds, legal issues with bonds, or whether to do with vigilantes, she doesn't seem to be aware of it. So I'm not quite sure what is happening even in the Attorney General's office.
So let me ask a direct question here. So are you doubting the competence of the Chief State Attorney at the regional office of the AG's office to have done a professional job in giving that advice she gave? Because that advice was a professional advice she rendered, looking at the facts, the evidence as presented to her or to him by the police. So I'm asking, are you doubting the competence here, or you're doubting the process or the systems or the institution? Which is which?
It's amazing how we can actually do the wrong thing or get things done wrongly and still do it professionally. When there is no political will to do something, they will make sure that it looks as if they are following the process. But I'm not quite sure whether the process was actually followed or whether they...
Which is why we're raising the issues about what the police did or didn't
absolutely,
do.
Because I find it very hard to... Not that they couldn't get evidence. The police could not collect evidence. This happened during the day. There was a judge in the court. There was a court clerk. There were people in the courtroom. These 8 people were arrested by the police. Presumably, they were the 8 people who did the act. And yet, no evidence. So, without any evidence, of course, you can give a professional advice. If the evidence is not there, or if you had made sure that the evidence doesn't come, you can, of course, give a professional advice.
But that's speculation.
On that's what I'm saying, that I find it very difficult. I would have loved to see that these guys were prosecuted and that the evidence collected was not enough to convict them. And therefore, they were acquitted and discharged.
Oh, that's what you're saying, the ideal situation for you.
Yes, ideal situation. That, you see, because this sets a very bad precedent going forward, that people can do whatever they want in this country and get away with it. And this is not going to be the end of it. It's like watching a movie and copycatting something that has been done in the movie, that you can also, commit a crime or something, do the same thing.
You see,
people are watching.
Clearly the public is outraged. We cannot deny that.
We
but
cannot
there are
accept
technical issues here, and then they are looking at the institutions here involved. You're looking at a criminal prosecution system which has certain principles that drive it or govern it and all of that. So for me, definitely the act is condemnable. We cannot even begin to describe the level of how outrageous it was.
That is not enough.
But the very people who have been accused are also to be made subject to the law. And the law requires a certain procedure that gather evidence, put it before us, make sure it's enough evidence that could, implicate them, and then eventually a conviction is secured. Now, I'm struggling to get this, because in as much as we're talking about the act, it's like we are trying to also lambast the system, which for me is quite worrying. I do appreciate it, trust me, but how do we ensure, because you raised very valid points in here that I must say, but let's look at the equation. There's a police involvement, there's the AGs, and then there is the duty of the judge in the courtroom to carry on with criminal prosecution.
You are not, we all have to assume that you are not guilty until you've proven guilty. That is the law. We are in a country of rule of law. But my problem here, and as I said, I'm not a lawyer, that the police couldn't collect evidence, or they did collect insufficient evidence. Which is which? Because it's really
yet to
difficult.
find out exactly. But according
Something
to
that
the chief
happened
state attorney,
during the day,
there wasn't sufficient
in court,
evidence.
probably even captured on camera, and that there was nobody. I don't know. Did the police talk to the judge who was presiding over that, to the clerk, to the people who were in court? We don't know any of these things. All we know is that there was not enough evidence, and therefore a professional decision was taken without the knowledge of the Attorney General.
Well, it's come out that, the consultations were done, I believe. That's what.
Oh, consultation was done this time. Okay. And that these guys have been discharged. And then we are saying that, but they were not acquitted, they were discharged, so we could go back for them again. What sort of country do we want to live in? We need to deal with issues the moment they pop their
So you're saying regardless, even if the chief state attorney in her wisdom, based on her training and everything, she preferred this advice, regardless, the prosecution should have gone on?
Absolutely. Because, when we get to situations, at the moment, what I'm hearing about, they were discharged, not acquitted, is as a result of the outrage that people have expressed. And they have opened a window that, look, if this thing is getting out of hand, then we're going to probably rearrest these people and then deal with them.
Very well. Let me come back to Mr. Jantua. Mr. Jantua, we've raised an issue here about the role of the police in criminal prosecutions and everything, right? Gathering evidence and all for the purposes of prosecution. Now, moving forward, how do you see this play out so that we avoid a situation where the very institutions that we seek to, uphold are becoming the targets of condemnation, if you like?
Abna, there are two sides to this story, as most of the panelists here have said. There's the political side,
Yes.
which I was having an argument.
But it
with
seems
that one.
there's
Just a
no
minute.
distinction. It's
Just a
blurred.
minute. But we need to make that distinction.
Right.
There's the political side and there's the legal side. Let's look at the legal side. What actually happened where the legal side is concerned? Evidence, witnesses, the fact that there's a relationship between the police, the lawyer, and the judge. So you go out there, you have a docket, you're not able to get enough evidence from that docket. Why then call the case to court to start off with? The judge is there. You can go to the judge chambers and make it clear to the judge, my lord, this case, we are finding it difficult to find the requisite evidence to prosecute. The other thing was the people they picked. Some of them said they were nowhere near the court.
The complainant himself, the police, was not present in court. The complainant was not present in court.
So when you look at Abna, when you look at the factors which contribute to the decision that was made by the lawyer, you can see there are many holes in those factors. And I believe that any lawyer who goes into court would not go into court willy-nilly and just take a piece of paper and say, this is the evidence. They need hard fact evidence.
Especially when it's a criminal prosecution where the standard is high,
Especially-
beyond reasonable doubt. You just don't turn in any ridiculous piece of evidence and expect it to fly.
Yes, and apart from that, this has wide public interest, and the reasonable man's test too can come in the sense that how will the ordinary man, Joe Jackson, interpret this case if we don't have the right evidence to prosecute? Now, are we going a second round?
But that's why I was asking Honorable Rickett Hagan here that is it the case that they are saying that regardless, given the level of public interest, regardless of the kind of evidence that was available, the case should have proceeded?
Well, you can't proceed with the case if you don't have the requisite evidence.
Eventually, it will be shut down.
Yes, it will be shut down. We will come back to this same standard. I believe it is not up to, it's not I believe, it's fact, it's not up to the prosecuting lawyer to go get the evidence. It's up to the police to get the docket ready, and then, based on that docket and that evidence, they go forward. Now, if the lawyer is saying the evidence that they brought me was insufficient, there's no way I can use this evidence. Because remember that the people too who are being accused, they have their rights.
True.
You can't put any...
6 out of the 8 have said they are not members of the NPP. That's what they've said.
Now,
the 2 are saying that, well, they are, but they were not, they didn't, take part in that. So clearly they've pleaded not guilty.
So, Abna, before we started, I asked you a particular question. I asked whether there's plea bargaining in our system. Because I believe those people, those original 8 people who came in to release the 13, members of the 13 would know some of those people to start off with.
So, but that's up to the police to do their investigations.
Well, they didn't do their investigation. So, offer some kind of plea bargaining to the 13 so that they can identify these people. Look, it is the invasion of the court. The invasion of the court is where the crime is. A house, it's like going to invade Menchia Palace.
In any case, that was the charge. One of it was disturbance of courts and, all the others. But let me read something that, Mr. Martin Amidou, citizen vigilante, had put out in his article. It's quite instructive here. He goes on, it's quite lengthy, but I'll try to, He says, what the advice preferred by the Ashanti Regional Office of the AG demonstrates is the importance of the presumption of innocence. Now, 6 of the 8 alleged Delta Force members have stated that they are not members of the NPP and did not take part in the alleged crime. 2 of the 8 admitted that they are NPP members, but they were not part of the group which the offences for which they were charged. The complainant was a police officer who was not even present at the scene of the offence. The 2 police witnesses who made written statements could not identify any of the suspects as a participant in the crime. Now, he asks a very important question. He says, is it the fault of the suspects that the police could not produce a better docket implicating them? And he answers in that, he says, not at all. Not at all. So I believe this is where we should be looking at. the police's role in criminal investigations or prosecutions.
Exactly. And are we saying that nobody in that courtroom could identify? I'm not sure whether the 8, when they came, they were wearing, was it balaclava, is that what they call it, on their faces, that nobody could identify them? Is that it? I'm sure there are people who were in that courtroom who could identify some of them. Okay, these 8, did they have an identity parade? And if they did have an identity parade, who came to pinpoint these 8 out? What was the process?
What led to the arrest of the 8
what was
is
the
another
process
question.
they used to go and arrest the 8? The police should come and tell us. I think that process, we should now go through that process of how evidence was gathered. And once we go through that process, we'll be able to pinpoint where the holes are.
Very simple. If right now, from all the, if you read what the Attorney General, Chief State Attorney wrote, she clearly was laying the blame on the police. When you look at even what Martin Emedu and others have written, it's very clear. Let's call a spade a spade. The police did a shoddy job. A thoroughly shoddy job. The only questions we have to ask were the police influenced?
Good question.
To do a shoddy job.
Yes.
And that's really the key here. But as to whether the police, and I find...
Influenced by who?
That's the question. Well, it's yet to
Listen,
be determined.
I want him to identify.
I'm going to say something. I found a very
rat.
interesting issue being raised all through this. There's a disturbance in court. Somebody is accused of
having participated.
Where is it that the person's first claim is that I'm not an MPP member? Did they require a party card to enter the courtroom to disturb? So I find that it's a red herring.
It cannot be a red herring because we're talking about an organization that is affiliated to the MPP.
Affiliated,
exactly.
Yeah, affiliated,
so you can't say that a CPP man was in there.
But you see, here's the thing.
Maybe he was.
Hold on. Here's the thing.
I don't think.
And on one hand, we hear, it's the Delta Force. It's not a legal wing of our party. You can't have your cake and eat it. And yet at the same time, somebody's first claim is that I'm not an MPP member. I couldn't be a member of a Delta Force. Listen, you can't have both. If the police did a shoddy job, put the police squarely where they deserve. Let's condemn it in no uncertain terms that they did a shoddy job because we expected to get those who disturbed the court prosecuted.
But Joe, it's obvious they did a shoddy job.
That's my point. But why are we all dickering around the issue and lambasting the
nobody?
Mr. Jackson, you raised the point that there is a possibility of a certain level of influence. That is in the realm of speculation, but
were they influenced?
Yes.
Because either the police should come out and say, we are so incompetent that as normal we were as incompetent as we do every day. Or we were influenced.
Joe, it's not.
It's not a strange issue. In the US now we're dealing with exactly the same issue.
In the US, the institutions work. That's the difference.
But aren't we trying to get our institutions to work in this country?
I don't think so. No, with the comments that are running on this table.
Let me tell you something. It's not a question of someone has influence. It's a question of, MPP, they say a party, I didn't say a person.
No, that's not the issue.
Mr. Jackson, allow Mr. Jantua to...
it's not a question of, yes, there could be influence, but it's the way we look at politics in this country and the way we are so tied and affiliated to individual political parties that it even affects our job. And you go to the police station sometimes and just stand and listen to the way police people talk. And it could be that, let's say, go for a party for, they are party people, why should we go and do it? That kind of attitude and that kind of mindset has infiltrated as our institution.
Yes, Mr.
That's what we need to.
I'll come to you.
I need a lot of time. Give everybody.
I think 2 points have been made here,
right.
And that is what we need to cure. That the question is, there's no two ways about it. The police didn't do a good job. Now the question is, what was the motivation? Why wasn't a good job done?
Which is what we are asking here.
And it is clear, as I said earlier, that there was no political will to prosecute this case. And therefore, people have gone to an extent.
And he took us back again.
People have gone to an extent to make sure that a good job was not done. That is what we need to get to the bottom.
It could be one of the factors.
Because it is quite difficult to understand. I mean, we've had police for many years, and we believe they know what we're doing. And then again, the second issue is that we need to be careful in this country. And then this applies to all the political parties, or the main ones, the NDC.
All political parties.
When,
I think
when they come to power. I'm talking about those who've been to power.
Okay.
And that's the NDC.
NPP.
And that when we come to
in the recent past.
When you get one political party in power,
it's comfortable.
All institutions seems to have become that party. When you get NDC, you get all institutions look like they are sympathetic to the NDC. That is what we need to separate. That is what doesn't happen in places like the US, where the institution works. I mean, the Trump issue you just raised, where somebody has been fired because he wouldn't even do what the president, allegedly, what the president is asking him to do. That is what, I mean, where people are afraid of even the positions they occupy because of a political party in power. And for that reason, they have to do their bidding for them so that they can continue to stay. Those are the things that we need to be able to separate.
To look at, yes.
Otherwise, we are going to have a problems.
Very well. Now, let me come
political motivation, definitely.
That's why I said the public smells a rat, clearly. And that is based on historical antecedents, which we all can attest to at some point in our life. But let me come to you, Nana Fedua. The Ministry of Information found it necessary to issue a statement that, well, government wasn't consulted, or perhaps the AG in Accra, the AG herself, was not consulted. I find that statement rather strange. What motivated that? Because we do know that the regional officers can do things, I mean, on behalf of the AG, if you like, on behalf of head office, quote unquote.
They're the representatives in
yes.
the region.
So yes, there are certain situations that would require recourse to, Accra, but otherwise they can do things on their own. So why did what motivated that statement to say that we did not, I mean, as if to say that if she had been consulted, perhaps something different might have happened, even regardless of the evidence that, or the evidence that was presented to the Chief State Attorney in the regional office in Kumasi?
I mean, what has happened on this table is even reason for that statement. Overly politicizing the matter, as opposed to wanting to deal with what really is good for us. You raised a question which led the discussion into another direction, which for me is the way we're supposed to go. Eventually it ended up in, well, it's about where's the political will, and then if and when, or when we get into power and all that. Does that answer the question? You posed the question which Mr. Ricketts-Hagen couldn't answer. And it was a crucial question. You asked about whether he was querying the competence of the state attorney. What did he say? Because he was busy trying to politicize the matter. It doesn't solve the problem. When it got to Kwame and back to Joe again, did you hear the discussion? Now we're dealing with a societal problem. I have a question. When a policeman stops you, is it proper for him to say, why were you driving fast? Or to say you were driving fast? What's his responsibility? You are the lawyer. Kwame is the lawyer. What is the policeman supposed to say? No,
no, carry on. I'm listening to you. Carry on.
Well, I was hoping you give the answer because it helps the point I'm trying to raise.
Right.
My understanding of an efficient...
The police is supposed to tell you that you were driving fast.
Thank you.
Identified.
Thank you. But what normally happens? Thank you, Kwame. What normally happens? They will ask you, why were you driving fast? It's a societal problem.
Yes, it is.
We have a fundamental problem that we must want to deal with. And if you want to, yes, you did. That's why I was saying that at some point we got into that, and that's where the answer to our problem is. The answer to our problem is right there. Eventually, whether the 8 are found guilty or not, we would have solved the problem if we begin to recognize that we should hold people responsible for their positions. The government will be ready, will be eager to come and tell you that this thing is not politicized because we have not tried to influence the situation. And that's what the Information Ministry tried to do. Even in spite of that, people have closed their ears to the fact that the president...
Of course, people are already prejudiced by the situation because, again, of previous events.
Thank you. So they don't hear that the president, various leaders in the party, NPP, have come out to condemn those acts.
Well, people would say that is rhetoric. I mean, we want to see action.
Then we should stop discussing because it means we don't believe anything. I'm saying.
So that's what we are getting to.
I'm saying that when Nana Fredia, I'm saying that, and I say this with all humility, when Nana Fredia of Reyata, the second vice chairman in the Eastern region, comes to say that I condemn what has happened in Delta Force, you say, oh, he's just saying for saying sake. Then we should stop talking. Then it means that what we are saying here does not matter.
Believe what you say.
By doing what?
That's for you to decide.
That is why they are in court. Do you know that some people were shot because we didn't go to court? Major Feli was shot for going for a loan. Nobody took him to court to ask him questions because people were in a hurry to find some kind of justification for something. So they shot somebody's father. I'm saying, are we looking to solve our problem? And you see, people have misconstrued the president's I'm in a hurry statement, beautiful statement, to now mean that we should hurriedly come as a minority to kind of say things. We should hurriedly want people to be prosecuted, whether they're guilty or not.
You know, you use
all
that
that
word
stuff.
when it suits you. We are in a hurry
because you should contextualize it. Of course I'll use it when it suits me. Why? You think I should use it when it doesn't suit me? I'm a very straightforward, honest person, Mr. Ricketts Hagen. You have to contextualize.
If you want to be in a hurry, be in a hurry.
You do not be in a hurry foolishly. You're in a hurry.
Don't be in a hurry.
You do
when you want to be in a hurry.
You see,
and then
when
you actually need to be.
When you know the character of Nana Akufo-Addo, you're in a hurry to get things done the right way. So, for example, when he told the IGP and the police in a very public setting that I am not going to get myself involved in your work, you must do your work as is. You didn't hear. Do you remember he said that? Have you heard he said that? Well, you wouldn't have because you are not interested. Because you are not interested.
What he says,
and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we don't stick to the issues, political, we're being in bed and all kinds of things. We don't deal with the real issue. The real issue now is that, yes, when you break, if we're interested in not just the society, and you see, Kwame said we have two issues, and I agreed with him, but I want to add a third one. We have a societal problem. And that's the part about the question I raised. Why are you driving fast as opposed to you were driving fast? We have a societal problem. So if we don't keep all the three within our purview, if we don't look at it and deal with them in the manner that we should, this problem.
Very well. Now, let me go to Honorable, because Honorable, I think you wanted to make Honorable Ricketts.
Yes. I find my brother's argument, you know, this government is in a hurry. Yet, you know, they do the talk, but they can't walk the walk. That is the problem we've seen in on the 150 days that, you know, they've been in office. And everything has basically been chaotic. I mean, what is... I just... The Attorney General's issue, again, you know, they have left themselves a window of opportunity against any public, you know, if the public are not happy, this is what we're going to do. They want to cover this up. They don't have the political will to prosecute this issue. Evidence was not collected by the police because something went wrong there. And that is why the police couldn't do their work.
Honorable, these are speculations.
So that they can, yes, well, we are living by that. If we are going to talk, we will have to think through our minds the reason why, because certain things don't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you must be able to think around it to see why could this happen? What will be the motivation? Why the police? There is a judge in the courtroom, clerks, people were in the courtroom when these guys stormed the place in a mob fashion and released people. Was the judge talked to? The clerks? The people in court? Was there an identity parade? All the things that you expect to be done for collection of evidence seems to have not happened.
And your
And the
response to that
question,
is political.
and the question I ask myself, or any rational person will ask, is that what is the motivation why the police did not do their job? Are they simply incompetent, or were they afraid of the positions they occupy, whether they are going to get transferred or whatever? These are the societal problems, but we should not hide behind whatever societal problems that we have as an excuse not to do what we should do.
Very well. We will come back,
just
Mr. Jantwa.
one-
We need to take a break. When we come back, Mr. Jantwa, you make your submission, then we'll wrap up on this topic and move on to the other outline topics for today's discussions. You're watching and listening to New Day Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is New Day Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, all in Accra, and we're also streaming live on the internet at 3news.com, also on GhanaWeb.com, and on our Facebook page, TV3 News. We'll go back to the panel. I think Mr. Jantwa was about to make his submission, so I'll go back to you.
Abna, we made 3 points.
Yep.
The societal ones, the police, and the third one I think was the lawyers being able to have evidence. I'll make a fourth one, and that's got to do with politics. Not until in this country politicians can uniformly
Agree.
and also condemn things that happen, that mindset will still be with us.
In other words, stick to principle regardless of where you stand.
Regardless of where you stand, especially where the actual offense or the actual matter affects the fabric of our society. We need to be able to stand it. Montier 3, what didn't the NDC do in support? When this whole thing we're talking about started, this court case started, this Delta Force started, they saying that they don't agree with the person that the president has chosen.
Yes.
What didn't some of the MPP people say? And that is where it starts from. And we need to be able to break that fact. Politics isn't everything that we should now put our country at a certain position. Look, listening to the radio the other day, the political will wasn't there to stop Galamsey. Political will wasn't there. If at the time it started, especially when the heavy excavators were getting into Galamsey, we had a uniformed voice to say that this can't happen. Chiefs, everybody, come together for us to stop this. We won't be where we are today. We won't be. Now, Santini said it yesterday, that political will and the weakness of the institutions caused what has happened.
Exactly.
And it's even happening here.
Right.
And so, I would expect, and because he's the president in power now, I would expect him, the president today, to strengthen the institutions. We need to get to a position when you go to a place like London or a place like America, the policeman doesn't have to open his mouth and talk. The mere sight of him makes you conform. The mere sight of him makes you conform. And apart from that, when we Ghanaians go into those countries, we stick to the law because we know the law can be enforced.
Right.
Here, we don't seem to be enforcing. All these things are things I expect any government in power to start tackling.
Building
Once you
institutions,
tackle the mindset
key,
of the
seriously.
people, things can change.
Right.
Typical example is Champon's Operation Feed Yourself. Typical example is when President Kufuor came in and says, we are changing incandescent bulbs to, energy saving. Everybody got hold of it because people understood it. We've got to that stage in our politics where there has to be uniformity of voice. There has to be things that opposition and party in power and all political parties can come together and say, this is wrong, let's straighten
Being
it.
principled,
Yes.
that's it, Sammy. But we need to move on to other,
I
because
just
we've
wanted to say
done,
that it is clearly he agrees with my argument.
well,
That's good.
that's good. At least we are agreeing here. So we can move on. We move on to some
That's what I was trying
other
to
issue
say.
here, which has, I mean, Mr. Jackson refers to it, I mean, has seen some linkages. So I think we can bring it in here. We're looking at the termination of the appointment of the medical director at the Accra Regional Hospital. And of course, this is a very, I mean, we can do it in about 10 minutes and then we move on to the ECG issue. So, Mr. Jackson, I'll start from you.
Okay.
It's in the media. Dr. Anaba seems to be talking. He's the one, I mean, it involves him and, of course, his employer, if you like. But he's the one in the media doing a lot of talking about alleging unfair termination and all of that. What do you make of this? Is it perhaps appropriate, or would it be appropriate that government comes out as well to let us know exactly what it is, what led to the termination? Because this is an employment contract you're looking at, that perhaps you'd never know. Was there a termination clause in there that allowed for an early termination, or what?
First of all, I say to Dr. Naba, well done. Well done, simply because we can't have a country where as soon as a minister comes to power, he literally overreaches and says, you're sacked. That is a recipe for chaos. And I'm happy Anaba says, listen, I have an employer, I have a contract, and let's go by the terms of that contract. And I think it's a good thing, right? One may wonder that part of the reason why police people are maybe not motivated to do the proper thing, and are quick to say, oh, but this is the ruling party's people, is because there is a fear that they will be fired, right? If your appointment, and I've sat on this panel before and said, if your appointment is a political appointment, your appointment dies the day the government dies. That's a different thing. If your appointment is not, you should not be afraid of being fired. And I'm happy Dr. Naba is saying, you got to do the right thing. I cannot be fired by the minister. Let the appointing authority fire me. If you have an issue, go and influence them and go and tell them to fire me. But you cannot fire me. And if you fire me, there are certain things I will demand. I think it's only fair. And every civil servant in this country should be rooting for Dr. Anaba, because therein lies the collective security that is required for them to function well. Every public servant. If you're a political appointee, hey, the day the government ends,
you're gone.
You're going. No two ways. And if you hang on to power and say you're doing it illegally. But doesn't seem to be so for the case. And anyway, when did heads of hospitals become political appointees? Where are we going in this country? Right? The fact that you were appointed by the previous government has nothing to do with it.
But who is Dr. Anaba saying his employer is? Who appointed
the Ghana Health Service.
The Ghana Health Service.
As simple as that, the Ghana Health Service, which makes sense to me. Who owns the hospital? It's the Ghana Health Service. Who appoints the heads of the hospital? It's the Ghana Health Service. Right? And if the minister has a problem with, go through the right process.
Exactly. I mean, you can do something that is unlawful like that. But let me move on to Honorable Ricky Sagan. Let me have your take on this.
Yeah, I do agree with Joe entirely. And as I said earlier on, two things among many things happen in this country with our politics. And we all have to come together on this and try and solve this issue. That institutions become part of the political party that comes to power. When they are out and another one comes, that institution, either by fear of losing their jobs or whatever, and that needs to stop. I said that earlier on. The number two thing that needs to stop is that certain appointment, like this one, which is clearly not a government, political appointment, as Joe rightly said. And just like our jobs have, ended with when we were out of, power. Jobs like this or positions like this should not be, subjected to this kind of ridicule. Otherwise, I don't know where we are going as a country. I mean, I heard the health minister about 2 days ago, so he's saying that the guy hasn't got management skills or something. What a ridiculous thing to say. that a guy hasn't got management skills, so that's why you are firing the guy.
But I mean, if there's an employment contract, there are terms of the contract.
Absolutely.
I mean, they could come to this, an agreement as to what would result or what would lead to your early termination.
But
the question is, if that minister was not the one who appointed, and I'm talking about the office, but the Ghana Health Service, wherein lies his role or business in here now, which is the question.
Even if he was involved, he could have said that, look, let's talk to the Ghana Health Service. They fired him, or they could have done things. This is a government of a party that does the professional thing, knows the right thing to do. Clearly, the employer is the Ghana Health Service, not the Minister of Health. And for him to come out, to the media to say that the guy didn't, have the management skills, so I felt was insulting. And that's not the line that he should be taking, or the route or the path that he should be following. And I'm glad that the guy is talking. These kind of things need to stop in this country. Whether on the MPP, NDC, we have to stop this somewhere along the line. They are the ones who are in power now. They are the ones who say they have the men and the women. Let them get on with it and do the right thing for this country.
Very well. Nana, what's happening?
Why did you put me right on the heels of
because that's a natural consequence.
You don't have the
because your moral standing on this matter is non-existent, as usual. True.
I mean, let's look at the issue.
Exactly.
Let's look at the issue as it pertains now.
When you are talking, don't be throwing deal with the.
Well, you're on the saddle now.
You left office barely 5 months.
Okay, Nana.
You can get.
Let's focus on the issue.
Clearly, you can't.
When you are talking, you have to keep that in context and be honest with the Ghanaian. I stick with what I tried to argue earlier. Politics is what is killing all of us.
Partisan politics.
Partisan politics.
It is what is killing all of us. I don't know what the details are of this particular matter. I mean, all kinds of stories have come out. The question of whether the gentleman can manage the place or not. How the workers were reacting to his appointment. All those things. The question about whether he was doing politics.
I mean, those are legitimate reasons for a termination. That is, if it's provided. But the question becomes the role of the minister in here. The question becomes, first of all, we need to check whether that really is. Exactly.
And then we can justify whether it even serves as good reason to do that. Having said all that, and I don't know the details, and I'm honestly not too interested, because I'm more interested in the fact that how do we get to that point where these things stop, if they are things that must stop.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The issue of politically appointed people knowing when their term ends. The issue of institutions that have politically appointed leaders, whether we want those institutions to have those types of leaders, or whether they shouldn't be appointed in a particular manner, so that the change of government doesn't affect their work and their political interests doesn't influence their appointment. When can we get to that point? What do we need to do to get there?
You promised change, the NPP, but clearly we're not seeing that in this particular instance.
But you see, then it raises, then the political interests. Right now I'm just raising the technical matter of getting an efficient system going. Then the political questions come. That's what you just raised. The political matter of, okay, but you're in office, you said you will do this. Why aren't you doing this? But do you do that with people who are not on your side?
Where people who are not on your side means what? So
means
right now
people who dream the dream you dream. But Professor Mills is the one best quoted for that. And then the question becomes that. But then, at what point does that question become irrelevant? It's not the question to ask.
Nana, what should...
No, you're both being fair. You're both being very unfair to me, because the point that I made was very clear. I was very clear in saying that when she raised the question, that is the other side. And I'm raising potential. I'm not necessarily saying I agree. So what are both of you trying to intervene for?
Fine.
What are you both intervening for?
No, if I'm raising issues, that's fine. But initially, it sounded like an opinion.
It cannot sound like, I said that.
But if you're raising issues, then that's fine.
I was right. You're all not listening.
Because
I said to you that you've now raised the political angle. And these are the things that will pop up.
Right.
Yes.
So you're raising issues. That's fine.
So, well, when all those things come up, then immediately every political player will start saying, how do I achieve those things without people who understand what I'm saying? So then you start replacing people with people in order to achieve that change that you want to achieve. Eventually somebody, we now move into the societal thing because it becomes perceived as a norm. Somebody now thinks, well, okay, when they came, they said they were changing things, and when they were changing things, they did this to change things, so we are doing the same thing. Eventually, where does it stop? It comes then to what exactly must we do so that these things end?
Perhaps we start
for me, it's the biggest thing. Is it a law
the civil
we must
service
put in
and
place?
not making the civil service subject of
political power.
Exactly, because the civil service is the backbone, of government.
And to infiltrate that, you're dealing with people who've been in office for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and they have a certain mindset. So
they are technocrats.
But they have a certain mindset. Here's our sociology. Our sociology is that our politics is a certain way, as we normally say, some way. So yes, they have all that technical experience, but is it not influenced a certain way that could affect you negatively? How do we deal with that? For me, I don't have an answer. That's why I'm just. I really, truly, yes, I truly don't have an answer. That does not answer the question.
Let me move to Mr. Jantua.
Doesn't necessarily answer the question.
Let me move to.
If he must be reinstated, because we have.
First of all, I don't even think.
So we need to. Well,
I hear he hasn't been sacked.
He's raising the issues about unlawful
he's
and
been
everything.
resigned.
But no, he has not even been resigned.
But you see,
he was.
No, he hasn't been
His
resigned.
appointment has been terminated.
But I'm saying, subject to whether it's the right thing or not.
But I'm saying, if he's become a yardstick for finding that way of changing things, why not?
They always leave a window, some small window.
But don't you all politicians?
That's why I say no more right.
They know they are not doing the right thing.
Don't you all?
Let's start.
Politicians. But anyway, let me move to Mr. Kwame
and let's start with Dr. Anaba and do the right thing going
Very
forward.
well. Mr. Jantua, you seem to have a lot of advice to spew out. Let's hear you.
It's very
Nana raised issues. Do you have any answers to those issues?
Very nice in opposition. It's very nice in opposition.
Like Rosie.
To say things that the ordinary man wants to hear.
With the benefit of hindsight, maybe.
Yeah, benefit of hindsight. But it's very nice in opposition.
MPP has just found out.
When the NDC were in power, didn't they do the same? Did they not do the same? We've got to get to a point in this country.
It must stop. That's
because
the point
look,
I'm making.
Dr. Anaba, isn't he a Ghanaian? And if it so happens that I'm CPP and I'm in the civil service, does that mean that when another party comes into power, I've got to lose my job? It doesn't mean so.
Absolutely not.
That we've gone right down to communications director being appointed by the president. Why is the sense in that? Where's the logic in that? What's the sense and logic in that?
Politicizing the civil service. That's what it is.
Why?
And that is so dangerous.
Why? Very, very dangerous. Now, the health minister, I have a lot of respect for him because some of the things he did in parliament. Quite an efficient parliamentarian. But does he employ staff? Is that his job, to employ staff? This Dr. Anaba, have they found a fault with his work? And even if there is a fault with his work, is it the minister who's supposed to sack him? When we stand on political platforms and we make promises and we tell our supporters, Yaba, Mubenye Juma, that is the cause of it. That is the cause of it. And let's ask ourselves, should political parties be funded by government? Or should political parties, we should find a better way of funding political parties?
You're raising a very critical issue here, which perhaps would be tabled for another day.
Most of the things that have happened with political parties is that the patronage. The patronage. They've got finances from people who have helped them, and they feel they need to pay back. And pay back at whose expense? Expense of the professional and the technocrat who is there.
Exactly, and weakening
Look at chief directors.
That's what
Look
happens.
at chief directors. Say a political party like the NDC has been in power for 8 years. The chief director has institutional knowledge that can help. If the minister comes in and he realizes that the chief director is not doing the work he's supposed to do, you are at liberty to, sack him or go through the right channels for him to be sacked. Or you need to warn him and tell him that this is our way of doing things. This is what we want to achieve. So please go ahead and do it. And if you're not doing it, then we have to relieve you of your position.
Which is why we have the Public Service Commission, isn't it?
Exactly. So, Abna, I've always said there are certain positions that the president shouldn't even go there. Certain positions that it's not up to the president to do it, and it all boils back to the cry: is the political system we are running effective for us? The presidential political system, is it effective for us? Because the president has so much power. In fact, I was so impressed with the Americans when they set up the council and they didn't seek advice from Trump.
Of course not, yes.
They went to tell him, this is what we've done. You either take it or you leave it. And I asked myself the question, would it happen in Ghana? Will it happen in Ghana?
It can, if we want
There is this.
But it has happened before.
There is this fear. There is this fear of political power. So people are scared of the president. People are scared of the minister. People are scared of the chief director. Why?
For obvious reasons. I mean, they want
Why?
to secure their jobs.
No, you want to secure your job, but the right thing should be done.
Exactly.
Ghana comes before anybody.
That's right.
I should be able to sit in front of the president and say, Mr. President, you've done wrong. You didn't do this right. I should be able to do that because the president didn't get there himself.
Right.
That's why
He was voted into. Yeah,
Exactly.
well,
be able to say because you're in opposition.
I'm in opposition. but you see, Nana, one thing you should remember: if I travel today and somebody asks me, "Who is your president?" I won't say, "Oh, it's the MPP person whose man is there."
Of course,
I'll
right.
say my president is Nana Akufo-Addo, and because he's my president, I have to be able to hold him, to book if he's doing things that are wrong.
Very important.
Very well. I mean, true. Clearly
Just
coming...
quickly before he raised a point about the minister employing. It's interesting also that truthfully, when somebody within your sector does something and you are the minister, eventually we start pointing at the minister. So that
but
is
the
also
minister-
But
the
appointing
minister-
authority is...
that's also
the
getting
minister
context.
isn't
And
appointing
in
authority.
in some of these jurisdictions we are quick to refer to as a reference point for efficiency. The minister ends up resigning for a civil servant's inefficiency.
They're taking-
Nana,
the
listen.
So
back-
I'm just raising it to say that
listen.
these are all
Now
realities.
listen, if the minister identifies that a certain employee is not working the way they're supposed to work, he goes through the right channels. And if it so-
I'm not
and if it
disputing-
so
that's what we're
and if
looking
it so
for.
Yeah, I'm
happens
not
that
dis- I'm
a
not
finger is
dis-
pointed
Doing
at
things
him,
in accordance with-
he can tell
That I'm
these
not-
are the things I did to
Yeah.
make sure that
That I'm
I
not,
cure this particular issue.
I mean, the
Very
minister
well.
clearly sacked.
So are you
sacked
talking?
him.
You are the people who remove Professor
Sacked
Atifa.
him.
You move Professor
No, no,
Frimpong Boateng.
that's-
You are
that's-
talking.
Let's carry
He came
on.
TV
Let
to say
Kwame and
to,
Joe
radio
I
to
think
say that,
we've agreed here. We
the
need
minister clearly
to
sacked
make
and
the
he didn't have the
institutions
right to do
work.
so.
No,
We
you
need
are
to make the
talking.
institutions work, and that's how we need to, move on
When we are talking, don't
in
talk.
the development, trajectory of the country. But hey, we move on to another thorny area, which is the ECG concession. It popped up. It popped up this week in a very interesting way. But we'll be looking at that into details. We'll look at the issues coming out from there, what it means moving forward on the ECG concession arrangement and everything. And then we'll also look at the issuance of the bond, the $2.25 billion bond by the government of Ghana, and the fact that the minority has
Is that the Templeton-
petitioned,
Templeton
yes, that
thing?
one, the fact that the minority has petitioned the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission and some other, agencies. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll move on into these topics as well. Back. This is Newday Saturday edition. We're live on TV3. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. We're also streaming live on the internet at 3news.com, on GhanaWeb.com, and on our Facebook page, TV3 News. We'll move on now to look at the ECG situation. The ECG and the U.S. Embassy, Minister of Energy tango, that whole business. We're going to look at that. So, interesting developments this week. Interesting developments this week.
To start. I want the others to start.
The Minister of Energy, Mr. Boakye Jako, you know, in an interaction with journalists after an inauguration of a 7-member committee or so to look at this whole arrangement, the concession arrangement, private sector participation and all, put out a statement, you know. Well, I wouldn't say it's a new statement, but of course, he put it out there that ECG's balance sheet is in a sorry state and a number of issues. And then also that the ECG is not able to keep its balance sheet in the best of shapes because it's unable to, you know, go after entities, private entities such as he mentioned the U.S. Embassy and MTN. And then on the back of that, the U.S. Embassy, of course, as you all know, the U.S. Embassy also tweeted that for 2 years now, it's been chasing the ECG to give it its bill so it can make payment. But the ECG has not been able to do that. And then Pool comes in there and the whole situation gets murkier. A very interesting situation here. It's sad, but I mean, it has some elements of ridiculousness, if you know what I mean. As in, Pool was insisting that ECG, to the best of ECG's knowledge, the U.S. Embassy is not owing them. And the U.S. Embassy is insisting that, yes, this is the situation. How did we get here in this, you know, serious mix of events here? I'll start with the Honorable Ricketts Hagan.
Interesting.
That somebody owes you and you don't know.
And you say they don't owe you.
And you say they don't owe you. When they say they owe you.
I can tell you that.
Is he answering the context of being a former Deputy Minister on Finance?
Well, whichever way, provided he gives.
Just asking.
It's quite interesting and really, really sad when you. But you know what the minister was saying the other day is not really anything new. I mean, we've known the problem, and with this, basically, you can run through all different shades of, you know, political parties, different shades of government. We have not been able to solve the problem to do with the ECG. And we've talked about it, you know, talking about it, balance sheet and all that is not going to solve the problem. And it's really, it's not only ECG. I mean, I have heard this from different, you know, people saying, you know, sometimes they owe ECG and ECG doesn't know. And rather, sometimes they go for people who have paid their bills. So there's really something not right there.
Some level of inefficiency when it comes
to collections within the ECG is known. The minister was just re-echoing the fact. But I think that, you know, we were going through this, we started this restructuring, if you remember the previous government, where people were even saying that the people within the ECG itself were basically reluctant to change. And that they started all this, the government wants to sell ECG and all these things, and then people bought into the idea and started, you know, defending them. The ECG problem, we have to solve the problem. The inefficiencies within the ECG needs to be resolved.
And it's for this same inefficiencies that the talk about the concession even started in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we need to address the issue. I mean, the minister was talking about how this fancy balance sheet, you know, business and all that. We need to solve the ECG problem. We cannot talk, and I'm not saying that, you know, no government should be exonerated from this. I don't think we've, throughout, you know, ECG's history, we have done the best that we can. You know, starting from even the subsidies. When I was a deputy minister, the subsidy issue within the system itself was not helping. Government probably owes ECG more than any of us.
It's a fact.
Well, it is a fact. You know, and we've not been able to resolve all these cross subsidies, cross pricing, all the things that we talk about with the ECG. And I get the feeling, and this is my personal experience, that people within the ECG itself, whether directly or indirectly, are reluctant to change. And when we were going down the route of trying to restructure them, there were people within the ECG. We were attending meetings, and the management of the ECG basically wouldn't show up because they were simply not interested in getting restructured. Look, you can blame politicians to an extent.
Because there was a fear of job losses, don't you think?
Well, that's why they have to come to the table. I mean, you cannot sit somewhere and say that I'm likely to lose my job, therefore I will not talk to you.
Away.
I will not come and negotiate. You've got to come to the table and negotiate. How can we retool people? How can we retrain? What sort of direction are we going? What sort of efficiencies are we trying to drive here? How is it going to affect our people? And how can we get the best for them? But yet, the management were going back to the workers to tell them all sorts of things that the government was trying to do that was simply not true. Yet they wouldn't come to the table. I was part of I attended several meetings that ECG management simply wouldn't come. They will come up with all sorts of excuses why they can't make it to the table.
What did you do about it?
It's been going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Now, my brother is in power.
No, I said, what did you do about it?
I'm telling you,
refer to my power.
I'm telling you what we did. That the restructuring was going on. We were going to go ahead. If we had stayed in,
come to meetings.
If we had stayed in power, well, somewhere along the line we were able to get some of them. But then we were going to go ahead and change the system anyway. We were going to go ahead. We were proceeding with what people were talking against because we knew that was the right thing to do. We knew we needed to change, and we had to do it with or without the management. The management, some of them had about 2 or 3 years, on their contract, and they would be leaving. Probably some of them didn't even care. They wanted to leave with their full whatever they were going to get, and didn't care about this job losses and all that. But then what I'm saying is that the MPP is now in power. They should solve the problem. The balance sheet issues the minister is talking about is all known. He's not now coming to tell us balance sheet and all this thing. We know the situation. We have really done all the work that needs to be done about ECG. We just need a solution. And they must get on with it. They cannot talk and talk and talk and talk for the next 4 years.
But so the concession agreement was signed under the NDC administration to take off.
Yes.
And well, there's been talk about a certain review to it, which we are yet to see it, manifest in a certain way.
We did.
But also, the reason why this hasn't really taken off the way it should is perhaps because of PUWU's constant, battles with the process. Clearly, they are in there to protect their interests, which is the one to secure their jobs. They feel their jobs are threatened here, and clearly they have that. But the question then is, at what expense can we go on with this back and forth about PUWU coming in? Because clearly there are inefficiencies with the ECG. And that was one of the reasons, like I said earlier, that this whole concession agreement, came up in the first place. Bring in private sector participation, pump in some capital. Let's get it more efficient. We are able to recoup or collect more revenue, and then we can fix our balance sheet. Mr. Jackson, can we continue with this back and forth with the pool?
We can't, and we shouldn't. It's very simple. I'm 100% for the concession agreement. I think it should be put through. I think we should resist all efforts to entrench the status quo. Madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. At this moment, ECG is mad. If they go along, it is going to be the same thing. The numbers we are hearing are even worse than we thought. Each day of operation is a loss. Each week of operation, a bigger loss. Each month of operation, an incredible loss. What are we talking about? It should get more efficient, and it affects all of us. If it was some small public sector agency in the corner printing with a printing press and didn't affect me, maybe I'll be kinder towards the process. But I'm not going to be kind towards the process. What they should be arguing about is, okay, if we're going to lose jobs, how do we get retrained? If we're going to lose jobs, how do we get a decent package
so out? The modalities of the concession agreement is what we should perhaps should be focused on.
But it should go ahead. Private sector participation should come in. It's an opportunity for Ghanaians and foreigners to even bring in some money and do the right thing. And it's not just ECG, there are other organizations begging to be run in the same way. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We'll come and sit here another 5 years from now, West Doomsaw, crying about the same thing. This is an opportunity to push this through. Let's not politicize the matter. After all, the concession agreement was started in the previous government. It's being carried forward. Let's go ahead. The height of ridiculousness, and it's only because what belongs to all of us doesn't belong to anybody. That somebody says, I owe you, and you turn around and say, oh, no, keep your money. Oh. Even if in the private sector, even if he didn't think he owed you, he would say, okay, where is it? Let's grab that money. It's because it doesn't belong to anybody.
And do a reconciliation later.
Yes, and then it doesn't belong to anybody. And so they think about what the ECG workers are saying. Somebody is saying, I want to do the right thing. I have to be in compliance. It is required from my home. So if I use power, I must show that I'm paying for the power. I haven't paid for it for 3 years. I want to pay for it. So no. You don't owe me.
Now it's interesting, their statement, they said in their statement that to the best of the ECG workers, the U.S. Embassy did not owe ECG in terms of bills. Now that in terms of bills, I found very
of course, they say you haven't billed us.
What does that mean?
You see, that's how ridiculous. He says you haven't, they say, listen, you haven't billed me. I want you to bill me. So somebody has done, trying to play games with us, tell us that we've gone into our records, there are no bills outstanding for the U.S. Embassy. That's not what the argument is. The argument is that you haven't billed me at all. It's ridiculous. And I think that all those who are being gingering the poor around, they should be ashamed of themselves, dragging the whole nation down this road.
But let me ask you this before I come to Nana Fedua here. What do you think is the interest of the U.S. Embassy here? Because you know the U.S. ambassador has said previously that this deal is done. There's no room for review. That was even before the president came and announced that there had been a review of some terms of it. I mean, some people are wondering, is it to basically make a strong case for this, to kill the pool?
The compact was signed on its own. If he loses the compact and doesn't get it through, somebody is going to call him to book and say, on your watch, this thing went bad. What happened in Ghana?
So there's a certain sense of, he's also looking out for a certain interest.
But that's okay. So long as his interests agree with my interests, I don't mind his...
And to the extent that what he's saying too is true.
It's true and right.
2 years.
It's true and right. And you see, it's not as if he's just saying that, oh, some of us I will sit here and say on TV that an ECG worker came to my house and tried to convince me to bypass my meter. I don't have any proof, so if they hold me to the reckoning, I'll just back off quietly and zip up my mouth and go away. He's saying that I'm prepared to pay. He's putting his money where his mouth is. We should be ashamed of ourselves. This cannot go on. They're dragging the whole country down the wrong road. Somebody is helping us out of a situation where are we going? Where is ECG going? Look at the debt they are racking up for all of us. It's not just their debt. The debt, listen, this energy sector business, and I'm happy my former honorable ministers here, can drag this whole nation down, can drag the financial system down. Ask him. He'll tell you about how huge this thing is as a burden on this country, and how they played games upon games. And I was happy to hear him say about the subsidies, because some of us spoke against subsidies and nothing happened.
Yeah.
I was really happy.
But
about
that
all
really
this.
is spilt milk. So
It's spilt milk. It's gone.
yeah.
But it has to be fixed.
True. It
And
has to
if
be fixed.
change has come, let us see the change.
Very well. We'll get back to the person preferring the change to hear his submissions on that. But before that, let me take some messages from viewers and listeners. This one says, Abna, please ask your panelists, how was Dr. Anaba appointed? For instance, Dr. Frimpong Boateng rose through the ranks to become the CEO of Kolebu. He says, I am an ordinary citizen. Okay, so he's asking questions there. Now, the AG department studies a docket and identifies all the loopholes in any docket and points them out to the police to fill those loopholes by further expanding the scope of investigations. Has the state attorney in Kumasi done that? Don't forget, these policemen are in Kumasi and likely know these men. But due to the volatile nature of the situation, the 8 were not arrested at the court premises but at Asafo. It says neither were the 13 arrested at the regional headquarters. How many times were people not arrested outside the scene of crime and even out of the region where the crime was committed? Hence, if the 8 were arrested at Asafo, it's neither here nor there. He says, besides, has the judge, the court clerks, police, prosecutors, lawyers, etc., who were in court and must be what must be witnesses in this case submitted their statements? If no, where has the state attorney in Kumasi not directed or instructed the police to do that? Well, clearly more questions than answers, but it's just to state that there's a certain system. You need to supply something for the AG's office to prefer an opinion, and that is what they've done. So until the contrary is proven, we, pretty much rely on what the AG's office has said. Now this one says, good morning, Abna. My name is Joshua. Let the NPP know that Nana and his so-called government have come to destroy Ghana and not save it. Is Mr. Naba a foreigner? For the fact that he is affiliated to a political party and a responsible Ghanaian taxpayer? He says, we, the youth, have come to realize that we were massively deceived by the ruling NPP party, and we are ready for another change come 2020 general election. Another one coming in says, the police should be blamed for lack of evidence. The state attorney did no wrong. We talk about issues we don't even have expertise on. Now, he says, which one of these panelists of yours isn't talking in support of their respective political parties? It's a shame that issue of this kind, i.e. Delta Force, is being politicized and people seem to justify that act by those boys, he says. Didn't we see videos of how these Delta Force members forced and dragged a certain man from the Flagstaff house with police standing there watching on? Didn't we see videos of how they invaded the court and obstructed court proceedings? What more evidence do we need to take action against these happenings to prevent them from degenerating into terrorist groups? Ghana seems to have become a private property of any political party that assumes power. There's a savior in Achimota. It says there's too much executive influence on the judicial operations in the country, and government should work hard to end this once and for all. That's Jacob in Garu. Now, Musa Abatwa in Kumasi says, Abna, the GBA, that's the Ghana Bar Association, civil rights societies, and independent minds have added their voices for the rearrest of the Delta Force 8, whose self-acclaimed citizen vigilante to confuse the public. I'm not sure what that means, but he says, we cannot allow this gory crime to be swept under the carpet. Thugs entered court in broad daylight and the prosecutor is lacking evidence. Ghana's democracy is under threat. This can only happen in Banana Republic. God save Ghana. Well, we'll put the brakes on there and then get back to...
she's concluding that Ghana is a banana republic.
That's what the person is saying in their opinion. They're entitled to the opinion, though. I mean, anyway, so...
In this instance, what does a banana republic look like?
It looks like Ghana, according to the texter. Let's not even go there. But anyways, back to the ECG issues. We'll go back to the messages. But Nana, the back and forth, the concession agreement has been signed way back. U.S. ambassador has said, before Nana introduced, or announced the review at the May Day parade, had said that indeed it was a done deal. We need to go and there's no turning back now. But we're still going back and forth, back and forth. There are certain timelines we need to, comply with. If not, there are certain repercussions that may come up. Still, we have pool in there. Let's hear from you.
Just quickly on the text, there was one about the GBA's position on this matter. They didn't say they should have the people rearrested. They said the case should go back to court. So there are two different things, and it's important that we see the clarification on that. On this ECG matter, I mean, I was just whispering to Kwame to tell me what this concession thing is about. I have no clue. I've just read stuff in the papers. I've listened to people, so I can't I can't make a good and thorough statement about this. But what I can state clearly is about my thoughts about this, and from what I've read and understood and the little that I've been educated on right now, tells me that there's something that must be done about these organizations. When an institution like the ECG is owed the kinds of money it is owed, for one, we must be on some kind of time bomb, sitting on some kind of time bomb thing with them. And I think that's what Joe was trying to get across.
But let me chip in here maybe to help you in your submission.
Right.
I mean, anytime the inefficiencies of the ECG has come up, the ECG workers, POO, and have come up, to point fingers at the government. The MDAs consume electricity, they don't pay.
It is ridiculous.
There's political
the way
interference.
we
when we decide to go after them, you tell us don't go after them. So we are not able to collect sufficient revenue.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of it, which is that, yes, maybe you cannot, for quote-unquote political interference reasons, you're not able to go after the MDAs. But you can go after the private commercial entities, which is an example here is the MTNs, for instance, which the minister put out there. Yet, the ECG is struggling to do that.
Or the US Embassy.
Or the US Embassy, yes. The ECG is struggling to do that.
The U.S. Embassy one, I think, is a diplomatic move.
Really?
The ECG is being
Diplomatic moves usually tend to be subtle, but this one wasn't subtle at all. So.
But I think when all that is murky, when we put all of that together, it makes it very murky. The political will or the lack of political will on the part of the ECG to deal with the debt of government is something that's interesting. I honestly don't know how that can be dealt with. But I think that maybe a bit of public support will get that problem solved. And while I say that, I don't see how the ECG will come into the public and say, the government hasn't paid us. They owe us, they haven't paid us.
But that fact is out there. It's undisputed, really.
Well, I'm talking about, for example, the U.S. Embassy coming out to say that they know they owe. Yeah. In the same vein, can the ECG come out to say, government, you pay us. We want you to pay us. It won't happen. And so there's some reality check there that we need to deal with, and therefore empower ECG to demand its money from government, which is the biggest debtor to them. Again, on this compact thing, this concession business, I really don't fully appreciate it, so I'll put a stop to that and probably hear Kwame out, and then I can maybe come back with some thoughts on it. Yeah.
Sure. So, Mr. Jantua, over to you. Where do we go from here?
Abner, what is the American embassy trying to achieve? What is their modus operandi? What is it that they are trying to say? And for me, from what they're saying, they're trying to paint ECG so black that it's non-existent. Anything you do in this life, you go by evidence. They should show us the evidence. And I will show you the evidence, if you permit me. That ECG sent bills to the American embassy. And I will give you my phone. Read it, so that it's not as if I'm making it up. What is on there?
You carry on make your statement with your statement.
So, it says here, customer account balance. And
can we verify this as...
That's why I said have a look at it.
No, but I can't. Just by looking at it, I'm not able to.
Well, I'm going to read it to you. It says customer account balance. Client, American Embassy. And the American Embassy said for the past 2 years, ECG hasn't given them any bill. This is a bill for the American Embassy. And it starts from 2015 right up to 2017. The amount on here is 29,640, 200 and something at the end of it. So, is the American Embassy trying to say that this document is false?
But the question is, Have they
ECG
paid them in the past 2 years? Because the ECG
but
is
this is the bill.
The ECG, yes.
It says here, between 2015 right up to 2016, all the monies have been collected. And then going 2016, 2017, bills sent to customer, sent to customer, sent to customer. So ECG is saying, we have sent you the bills.
But have they paid?
Well, they have paid some and they haven't paid others. So maybe there's a discrepancy.
Exactly.
Maybe there's a discrepancy there.
So there's still an issue about collection.
But this bill shows that 2017 they've sent a bill.
But let me just bring this in. You know that the embassy also went on to say that they requested for itemized bills and not that. I mean, general, because they needed to know exactly how much they were consuming, because they needed to, you know, send back to, is it Washington or wherever. So they were requesting for an itemized bill. And I think the PUWU representative also conceded to that indeed they were still working out something. So clearly there's an issue of the billing.
You know, the electricity people can't just walk into the American embassy and say they're reading their meter. It's not done there. They have a different system that they use. Anytime Electricity Corporation goes to American embassy, they are accompanied by an official from the American embassy. And so they'll be able to tell them at any given time how much they owe. You come to my house. I'll give a typical example of myself. ECG went bringing me my bills, when reading my meter, because they said anytime they came, I wasn't home. So they were estimating my bill. My bill now came and it was huge. So
so on what basis did they
were
estimate?
Estimating my bill on previous consumption. Now it turns out that I now took my reading to ECG, and it turns out when they balanced it out, I even owed more. So I said to them, it cannot continue the way we're doing it. How can we make sure that this thing doesn't happen again? So they said online. And so I get my bills online. Mm-hmm. Now, would anybody have thought that if the ECG went keen on collecting their bills, they would even attempt doing online? They would attempt it. I've come to your house, you are not there, I don't see you, why should I come and collect?
So you smell a rat in this situation as well?
Listen.
A big one.
Listen, the MCC, the Millennium Challenge Account, the whole contract, we can't do anything about it. That is signed. Mm-hmm. But the bid on the concessionaire has not been signed. It's only an RFP that has been put out.
What's an RFP?
Request for proposal. That is the only thing that has been put out. That is why we are able to sit and talk about it. Look, the ECG, some of us who are with civil society and other organizations have formed a group. And we have been the driving force in making sure that PUWU understand what government is doing and making sure that they can also speak with government. We've been liaising between the two. The major problem is that government owes, other people owe, there's equipment failure, there is management problems. Mm-hmm. The position of ECG is not only ECG, it's everybody. And yes, I do agree, we have to put a stop to it and we have to find a way out. But you don't find a way out where the IFC, who are handling this, are in conflict with what they are doing. Because the list of companies that they have outlined to take over, to bid for this thing, they are supporting nearly, is it 5 or 6 of those companies? Mm. They are advising our government, including those who are going to be chosen. Is that right?
So there's a conflict of interest.
And so for me, so far as I can see it, the Americans have a different mindset to this thing. And I must say, all this energy thing, we see it as if, oh, they are bringing us money or they are not bringing us money. There's a bigger plan to that than we know where energy is concerned, not only in Ghana, but in Africa. This concessionary thing that we are doing, some countries in West Africa have poo-pooed it. Benin is one of them. Nigeria is another one of them. I mean, how much are we talking about? How much are they giving us? 500?
498.
And it's not all that money that is going to go into ECG. Let's go deep into the crux of the matter. Not all that money is going to
in about
ECG.
2 minutes give some breakdown of what you just said? I mean, so what's that concession and why are the other countries rejecting it?
Because of the
What's the
way
concession?
it has been handled. What ECG don't want to happen, they don't want a situation where a single company is handling the whole of ECG. What they are saying is that we need to have a termed joint venture.
And there's scope for
Yes,
that because
scope
the
for that.
concession agreement
Now.
hasn't been signed.
Yes, it
like
hasn't
you
been
said.
signed. It hasn't been signed.
So that's the basis for Nana Akufo-Addo saying that
Now,
The
now,
reviews.
now,
51% and all.
now,
Okay.
now, the basis for that, we kicked against the 25 years. We kicked against it. But why 25 years? So when the vice president went to America, Washington, and he sat with them, they made the point that, okay, we can bring it down to 20. However, no country or no government or no person bringing that amount of money in would be able to make their return within a 15-year period or within a 10-year period. The best would be a 20-year period. So that has been agreed. We made the point that there are certain local companies that ECG are using in the districts, those who do the metering, the wiring and all that, who weren't part of the RFP. And we're saying, where's the local content in there? It
They
can't
weren't
be
part
possible.
of it because they
weren't part
didn't
of
put
it.
in their proposal or they weren't made aware of the
they
process.
weren't part of it because IFC made it clear that if we need tick poles, we don't need to come to Ghana and buy tick poles. We can go to Chile and buy tick poles and bring it. Are you not spoiling the local business? And so when we put this to the president said, how? Not possible. And that is how the 51% came in. Now, that 51% at the present moment hasn't been defined. Is that 51% ECG playing 51%, or is it 51% of local companies coming in?
Well, according to the plan, was 51%
51%
owned by Ghanaians.
Ghanaians, yes.
So
Ghanaians. And 49% by whichever company comes in. Now, that 51%, is the Ghanaian company going to partner, let's say, Tata, who is one of them, going to partner that company? Or is it ECG who's taking that 51% and bringing along Ghanaian companies? The vice president has indicated that they have gone to, they've asked AGI to try and form a consortium together for Ghanaian participation, which is a good thing. Now, if you try and also mothball ECG, after 20 years, who takes over? It comes back, doesn't it? Where would the knowledge and wherewithal be, capacity be for Ghana to take over? So we're saying, don't mothball ECG. Make them part and parcel of it so that they are building capacity. You're making sure that everything that they need to do to take over is
some
there.
continuity after that.
Now, the other side of it is that anybody who's going to take over, that is, the foreign partner is going to take over, needs to bring 100 million. Now, we have said they would need to prove to us that that money is there for the next duration of time that they are in here. Because what tends to happen, and it even happened with the, what do you call it, the Vodafone Ghana Telecom sale. For the first year, they bring whatever money they are supposed to bring, and then the consecutive years, they make the money in country. That doesn't help us.
Right.
It doesn't help us in any way. And anyway, this thing we're talking about, even 20 years, there are periods where it will be reviewed. And if it's reviewed after those periods and we see that it's not working, we abrogate. So what is the challenge?
So we still have some fine-tuning to do.
We still have some fine-tuning to do, but the most important thing is that Ghanaians should be part and parcel of this. It just can't only go to foreigners, because the foreigners have, the companies coming in, the difference between them and ECG is that they have shareholders. They need to satisfy those shareholders.
Right, very well. Let me have Mr. Jackson come in here at this point.
You see, there are two different things we should be talking about here. One is, should the process continue? And it should be yes.
Process continue in
No,
what
nobody
state or in what form?
Yes.
Nobody says it shouldn't
But when
continue.
when you look at the placards, etc., that the pool guys put out, what did they say? Stop. Don't go ahead. That's the problem.
Look, Joe, let me say something. There is no way a government is getting 100 million and you let it go. No way. Because this money is going to go back to chess.
Yes.
If it's not used, it's going to go back to chess. And I don't think that people have the strength to stop the government doing what they're supposed to do.
Let's not,
but the right thing has to be done.
Let people be clear that we're going to go ahead. If there are concerns, local content, the length of the concession, I'm as private sector as anybody. I want to participate in this process.
And those are some of the things they are fighting for.
If they were the only things we're fighting for, life would be much simpler. On the other hand, remember also, and I want to point this out, the U.S. Embassy said clearly we have over 160 facilities. And not all of them.
Let them itemize it.
Not all of them.
No, let them itemize it.
Mr. Gentleman, please, allow him.
Give us evidence.
Mr.
Don't say
That's
it.
fine. No. Please allow him. Please allow him, yes. Mr. Jackson, carry on.
No, I just...
All of them are being built.
You owe me.
I said show us evidence. Show us evidence.
No, Mr. Jackson, please let Mr. Jackson finish with his submission.
And American Embassy are sitting there for everybody to see, this is what we have, this is what we don't have, so that we stop this argument.
But anyways, for now, the response we have from POO, for me, suggests to me that, yes, there are some issues they are sorting out with the U.S. Embassy. So it's not necessarily a thing that the U.S. Embassy is making up,
And it's not necessarily a thing that ECG haven't sent them any bills.
Well, yes, but they're still sorting that out.
Yeah, sorting it out.
Yes.
But they shouldn't say they haven't sent them any bills, because it proves that within the last 2 years, 3 years, bills have been sent.
Itemized bills, is what they said. But Mr. Jackson.
I have 3 premises. I get bills on 1. I don't get bills on 2. I can claim legitimately that Jammy's been
How
sent.
do we know? I've just shown to you that there are bills that have been sent. How do I know?
Facilities.
So they should tell us. They should show us. Show us evidence.
There's something that years ago used to come. Let me just say on the lighter note. You know, the way you guys say poo, it sounds like somebody's teddy bear or something. Some dad about name of teddy bear.
Workers Union. Okay, thanks.
Now, more seriously.
It's our training.
Oh, another muffle. Poo.
Okay.
Now, you know, I years ago, I used to have issues with wanting to get some private entity involved in managing our water, involved with managing ECG, because there was a certain sensitivity on mine, as far as I was concerned, that it's a security zone. If you leave water to be managed by somebody other than the state, there's something insecure about it for me. I used to have that thought. I used to feel the same way about electricity. What has changed? Such that we're eager to now get into a situation where we've reduced state, or we're going to reduce state influence and have private sector come in. And then what? Is it the money factor? Is it the inefficiencies
to make it efficient and to make it profitable?
Those are the objectives. There needs to be a certain
also
clarity.
Because worldwide, we have good examples of utilities that have had private participation that have proved a lot more efficient.
It doesn't mean it will work here.
I'm not
that's something that
I'll give you another example. We used to have Ghana Telecom monopoly.
Yeah, but the sensitivity of Ghana Telecom, as much as it's up there, if you ask me, is not as with water
but
with
just
electricity.
Just a minute.
Because now you have, for example, you have mobile money.
Let's not really lose the focus here, but it's worth mentioning that there were similar sentiments around the Ghana Telecom issue. There were similar sentiments. Yes, but fast forward to this year.
The difference between...
You've seen a certain level...
The difference between the telecoms industry and water or electricity is that the technology has taken...
Yes, it's taken over.
It's taken it. So you cannot tell Mobitel, what they call Millicom or MTN, what you can tell Vodafone if it was state-owned. You know what I'm saying? So, but this is water that runs through our taps, our security, you know, people drink it, blah, blah. So that type of security is what I'm talking about. And now, when we're talking about the fact that in the case of power, so somebody can go and terrorize us by taking over and doing what they like with our energy. That's the kind of thinking I used to have at the time. Now, obviously, it has to change. So what security do we have in knowing that we've put the management of our energy, 49% of it, in the hands of somebody whose primary interest is making money?
That's right.
That is if it were solely a private entity. But where you have this joint thing, then
and it's good to hear. It's good to hear about the portion
let's have honorable comment.
The issue is this: we've had talks back and forth on the issue for a very long time, and somewhere along the line, we must stop analyzing the problem and solve it. We have come as far as we have come, you know, in the previous government to where we are signing, you know, all the agreements. This government should take it over and make things happen.
But that's what Mr. Janto is saying.
But you see,
that the concession agreement remains. Mr. Janto, please allow Mr.
The point that what the American embassy is talking about, whether it's exactly how they are saying it, or it clearly tells you
there's an inefficiency.
There is something wrong. The inefficiencies we are talking about do exist.
Yes,
it's real. And we need to get to the bottom of it and solve it. We need to really, if there are problems with what has been signed, we need to look at it.
Nothing has been signed
on that. You know, or what has been discussed or where we have come so far. You know, it's not the issue of talking about balance sheet and all those things. We know what the problems are. Let's get to the bottom of it and solve it. There's clearly a problem with the ECG. The ECG cannot continue the way it's
obvious to me that
we need to solve the problem.
The ECG problem is not because Ghanaians don't know how to manage things. You see, that's the thing. And that's what I think I'm gleaning from this. It's not necessarily Ghanaians don't know how to manage things. It is that politics and sociological whatever that allows us that allows the state to owe ECG so much, and somehow ECG has a difficulty collecting. So if ECG was paying that 2 billion cedis or dollars right now,
it would help them.
What would this discussion lead us to?
Well, it
Mr. Jato, let me ask this question.
Let me ask, but it will help because it's not only the financial bit that is causing the problem. There are other bits to it.
Yes.
But the question I wanted
we're not talking about those.
The question I wanted to ask Honorable Ricketts was that when they brought this IFC into place, what did they do? After a while, the thing became like a humongous thing on them, and they left it. And that is why IFC now came in and did what they had to do.
So you mean they were incompetent about it?
No, they were incompetent about it.
Very well. Let me take some messages.
About it. We have seen that they were incompetent about it.
What happened is we left the office.
Honorable, see my guy.
I know you'll be happy about it. But whatever it is, we need to solve the problem.
Exactly. And that is why we are talking about this. How do we solve it? Because Mr. Janto has raised a point, which is that the concession agreement has not been signed yet, and so there's room for the review, the terms, and what the president announced.
One of the other things that Pubu were very sensitive about was the shifting of ECG staff into NUCO. And if somebody came and said, I don't want to go to NUCO, what were you going to do? There was nothing there to protect them. And it was one of the things they were asking for. We've been able to come to a conclusion on that at this present moment in time.
Very well. Seeing that the concession agreement hasn't been signed, let me ask this. I mean, you know, people have talked about the floating of shares on the stock exchange, for instance. Is that in the mix at all? Or
it's
that
an option, but we've moved past that.
So
move past that. You just don't get up and say you're floating shares.
You need to put the company in shape.
Exactly.
Yeah. You see, the issue is not about raising money, or the issue is not about having ECG in the hands of Ghanaians. The issue is about getting ECG to run efficiently.
The other thing with ECG is that there is an informal business in ECG which is being run by ECG people themselves, and it's all part and parcel of it that we are looking at. So it's a whole huge thing that we have to deal with, but we have to deal with it in the right way.
Very well. Let me take some messages here. This is Anthony from, it says, Suefua in Kumasi. I hope I got it right. He says politicians and managers of ECG should stop blaming their balance sheet and other weightless accusations and look out for pragmatic measures to solve these problems and provide good service to Ghanaians. If they seem not up to the task, they should leave the office, and those who are able and willing to take charge, because upon all these cutthroat costs, we're still having poor service. Good morning. Now, the NPP should not forget that they made promises of creating jobs. Here is a case: they keep laying off people from their work. And what are they telling us? That is mean if there is a change, that it means if there's a change of government, this is how we're going to go. Ghanaians, let's wake up from sleep and fight for our rights. This is Freeman Degbe in Tema Committee 8. This one also says a principal state attorney is not to blame. He took that decision to withdraw the charges due to pressure from government. It's she actually. Now she's trying to protect her job. If people can go into the courtroom and do what they like, he says, well, Ghana, where are we going? That's Al Hag from WA. This other one is saying all CEOs or MDs of state institutions who have not yet been sacked should start packing to leave. Okay, so there's a caution to them. This NPP government will not spare you at all. They don't care about your experience. What matters to them is their party members and not Ghanaians. It says Dr. Anaba should comply and drop the legal threat. If not, they will work they'll work you out behind the scene. It says that's the character of the NPP. Well, it says Ghana should be careful with the Americans in terms of the ECG. They will pile debt on ECG and eventually take over through their small prints and clauses. Can't we raise $500 million to invest in ECG? Ghanaians, he says, let's not be cheap. Once they get in, they will take over. Similar issue happened to Pioneer Food Cannery, and Starkist took over it at the expense of Mankwadze. Abdul Majid in Tamale says, good morning, Abna. Can the Supreme Court prosecute these people as we witnessed in the Muntie 3 case? There's no political will in prosecuting them. No, that cannot happen. The behavior in which this current government has adopted will not help Ghanaians. Ghanaians voted them into power for positive change and not the kind of negativity that is going on in the country. Sacking here and there. Why? He should change. It says we should change the style of governance that will benefit Ghanaians. That's my advice. That is Richie in Tema. Let me take the last one here. He says the attack was on the judiciary, and I think the Chief Justice should have taken the matter up and prosecuted the 8, including the leaders of the group, as we witnessed in the Muntie 3 saga. Again, this is the point that we made earlier. It's subject to the laws, and the laws require the process to go through a certain, framework,
contribution
which
calls
we need to do. But we'll take a break at this point. When we come back, okay, I'm told we are not going for a break. So yes,
I was saying that this last text is, for me, points to the fact that the public must constantly be educated on how things work.
Right.
Because if you recall, when this thing happened, the initial response, some people said sack the state prosecutor, and all kinds of things were going on. We must all be made to appreciate and understand how systems work.
Exactly.
It will now allow us to be more reasonable in our responses.
Sometimes we cloud the issues with the politics of it, and then it just throws everything haywire.
Who's supposed to educate the
public? It throws everything haywire.
That's why I keep hitting on the media people.
Okay, so
when I raise it,
let's wrap up on this
topic.
ECG, yes, and then we go on to the bonds briefly. We don't have much time.
Which bonds?
Mr. Jackson, let me take your wrapping up comment on this ECG.
Well,
poo and all that.
But the key thing is that we should go ahead, we should negotiate, right? And we definitely need a lot more efficiency in the ECG
system.
In the system.
I
mean, this whole U.S. Embassy pool fight is an embarrassment to all of us.
Very well. Honorable.
It's clear that ECG cannot continue, the way they have done for the last, how many years. And the effort must really come from all of us to make sure that, what needs to happen. And as I said, we are not going to go back in analyzing the problem and balance sheets.
We've moved beyond that. Just get it fixed.
We just have to get it fixed. So the minister should do more in fixing the problems than reiterating what the balance sheet looked, because we know the balance sheets. We don't need him to tell us.
Right. Mr. Janswar.
EC is just leasing out its equipment, its whole setup to any of the concessionaires who would be chosen. They're just leasing it out. They have not taken into consideration, maybe not taking into consideration, the concessionaire coming in is not paying the liabilities that are there now. And so we should make sure that government owes, whoever owes ECG should be mandated to pay. And the first institution will be government. Pay that off so that we know that for nothing at all, they have something to go by. Do not mothball ECG. Make ECG part and parcel of this process. And also open it up to Ghanaians, especially the last mile. The last mile bit is the retailing side of ECG. Open it up. Bring competition in, just like the UK has. We brought competition in so you and I can go to different distributors of electricity. Open it up so that in the end of the 20-year period, we have an efficient ECG, and we're not going to go back to where we are today in 2017. I think in 20 years' time, I'll be about 80, an old man, if I'm still alive, sitting in my corner.
You'll be enjoying affordable.
I want to see that. I want to see the
Let me hear from wrap up for me.
There's a saying in Chi. Let the minister continue to pound those points so that we can discuss them and get to some finality on some of these things. Kudos to the minister.
You didn't.
Let us.
What you said in Cree, you didn't explain it in English because
it sounds better.
There are people who want Ghanaians.
Well, it's the media is supposed to educate. So now the idea is that they should go open up.
We should do that.
But the point, therefore, being, having said that, I'm glad to hear that the president, on being given the details, according to Mr. Jantua, recognizes the importance of a certain level of empowerment on this matter. I pray that by the time all this is said and done, and I haven't listened to Kwame on all this, and I know him for his stance on some of these things. I haven't listened to him. I lean heavily towards the arguments that he's putting forward on how we should proceed on this matter. Unless he's hidden something that
well, that's good. Thank you for that. So let me take some messages and then quickly we go on to the bond issue and the fact that the minority has petitioned the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission. We just have about 7 minutes to wrap up. So quickly, this one is from Bernard Tete. He says, I use the e-prepaid meter for over a year. ECG cannot interface with my meter. I have begged them on many occasions to come and work on it, but they retort with excuses. ECG is inefficient. And Awahab in Kodia Hinkro in the Shanti region says, my house was connected to electricity since 2015 and ECG hasn't given us the first bill. We went to their office to know our bill, but they demanded 150 Ghana cedis before they tell us what is that for. Well, this is an allegation. We don't have it as a fact now. So ECG need not be privatized. I wonder why they didn't know the people owing them. Even I know some 3 radio stations in Ghana never pay a peso since their operations. From Sedon in Sogakope. Anyways, interesting things happening. I mean, if you left it to the public, I'm sure a lot of messages will come in here suggesting various experiences they've had with ECG and the fact of their, well, let's just say, inability to do what we expect them to do. But we move on quickly. Minority petitions U.S. securities. This was reported in Graphic on Wednesday. Over the 2.5 million bond that the government of Ghana issued earlier on in the year. Mr. Jackson, you know I'll definitely stand with you on this. Yes. What do you make of this? They did announce when it was issued that they would do this, actually, so they've gone ahead to do that.
I think it's within their rights. I personally don't think a lot will come out of it, but it's within their rights. We've exhaustively talked about this bond. We don't think, in my opinion, what was done was pretty much with the precedent of what has been done before. There's this issue in quotes of what?
Being shrouded in secrecy and the conflict of interest.
I think those are tenuous arguments to be made. it's within their rights. It's a good thing for them to be able to go to the
security, the SEC in America.
Yes, and if there's any fire to the smoke, let it come out.
Yeah.
I think we should be happy that they're going for an evidence-based evidence-based
Anyways, yes.
accusation, if you like.
Right.
But it's fine. I really don't have problems with that, with them going forward. If it's a vexatious
Venture. It would show at the end
it
of the
would
day.
show.
Very well.
If there is some thing to be said, it will show. At this moment, I think that really for the masses of us, we've moved beyond this
Very well.
issue.
Okay.
So we're leaving it to the NDC to come and really show that there is some fire
very
under
well.
all the smoke.
Great. Mr. Jantua, so here the minority is saying that, I'm quoting them from the graphic, it says the SEC will primarily be investigating suspected conflicts of interest and insider trading, which are violations of U.S. law by the Honorable, well, that's what they say here, Honorable Trevor G. Trevgun, who is a director of Franklin Templeton and board chairman of Enterprise Group, a company owned and founded by the says Finance Minister of Ghana, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta. What should we make of this?
Well, the process needs to be followed. The question is, will the Americans investigate? Is it in their interest to investigate? But if they investigate...
Because they are alleging violations of U.S. law.
I'm sure they will do an honest job for all of us. And if it so happens that, yes, some fault is found, I hope our end took a deal with it. I hope we won't whitewash it because of politics, and that we will deal with it and make sure that what is done needs to be done. So, as Joe said, is the NDC's right? Is anybody's right
to do that?
To do that.
They're doing.
And so, let's see where it ends up.
Right. Honorable, you were a former deputy finance minister.
Yeah.
What the issuance of this bond, was it different from what you know the process to be?
There is everything wrong about this bond. And if I can just take, a couple of minutes to just a couple of minutes to give you, because we need to appreciate really, I think what we are not seeing here, where the conflict of interest issue and lack of transparency comes from. We need to take just 2 seconds to explain this. Domestic bonds, normally, we don't take it to Parliament. Okay, that's number one. Domestic bonds are supposed to raise money domestically, even though now these days we allow people to come to the market. It is supposed to help also, not only for money, but also to help build our capital market here in Ghana. And that is by getting financial institutions and all other institutions who participate in this one to take part. When we read our budgets, then the Ministry of Finance, and my experience, authorizes the Bank of, we read our budget in November, authorizes the Bank of Ghana, because with your budget, your revenue and your expenditure, your gap, which is your deficit, is funded by these bonds. Authorizes the Bank of Ghana to then go out there and do. What the Bank of Ghana does is that they put a calendar together to notify primary, dealers, investors, and all the people who participate in this bond, so that they can understand the schedule as to how these bonds will be done. So if the budget is read in November, which is for the following year, January to December, the first quarter is January to March, there will be what they call the issuance calendar on the Bank of Ghana website from January to March. There will be another one that will come later from April to June, and another one will come from July to September, and the last one will come from October to December. So all the people who will participate in Ghanaian bonds, whether they are Treasury, what is the 91, the 182 and all that, will all be there. If the bond is not on the issuance calendar, it is not done. If for some reason the Minister of Finance decides that they need more money and therefore there should be more bonds issued, they will instruct Bank of Ghana, and Bank of Ghana will put that bond on the issuance calendar. The bond that was issued the 2.25 billion bond, the 15-year bond component was not on the issuance calendar from January to the 31st of March. This is what the issue is. The lack of transparency, where the primary dealers or the people who will be buying the bond, especially the domestic investors, were not notified.
So question then, why petition the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission?
So the issue here is two. Number one, the jurisdiction of the bond is Ghana, because the bond was actually issued here because of the domestic bond. The participant, the major participant that we are talking about, the major investor, is a U.S. investor. So that U.S. investor is domiciled in the United States, and therefore that is their jurisdiction. If we are investigating the investor as well as investigating the Ministry of Finance, then both jurisdictions will come to play. We have petitioned the
investigating Mr. Trefgan.
Yes. But the Securities and Exchange in Ghana came out to say that, which is really ridiculous, that they don't have a board. Look, this is not a board matter. There should be structures within the Securities and Exchange that deals with these issues where there are insider dealings and all that. It should be permanent, board or no board. They don't need a board. It's not a board who's going to investigate this. So that itself is problematic. But the biggest problem here is that we don't want a situation going forward where government of any shade, whether it's the MPP or the NDC, will be doing domestic bond, but yet go through the back door and do an euro bond within the domestic bond, where a single investor, Templeton, what does Templeton know that the other investors don't know? That they come to the market to take 95%. We've been dealing with Templeton. The conflict of interest issue that we are talking about, which the government doesn't seem to understand, is this. When you have a Minister of Finance who has an association with the biggest participant of our bond, whether directly or indirectly, it's a conflict of interest. Nothing really needs to happen.
Anyways, I think this argument has been had over and over again, so we just move on.
I need to tell you something quickly that happened in Sri Lanka, which is still ongoing. A bond was
30
issued.
seconds, please.
A bond was issued in Sri Lanka, and it's happened twice. And one company called Perpetua took a good chunk of it, similar to this. And opposition and people raised an issue on this, and then nothing happened. Later on, it happened again, and it became a big problem. And they realized that the person behind the company Perpetua, that seems to have some information that the others didn't have, is actually the son-in-law of the central bank governor of Sri Lanka.
So that came out after the investigation.
Very well. A very big problem in Sri Lanka at the moment.
What do you think the fallout of this issue would be? The petition.
Mr. and say that this petition is going to, or I'm paraphrasing him, saying that this petition is going to expose or is going to confirm the internationalization of the incompetence of the NDC. Listening to Mr. Rickett Hagen, I'm almost irritated, because this is a man who has just come out of government. It's not that his party was in government, he himself was government. And he has outlined the processes. I don't know a whole lot, but we all know that those processes, that quarter that you refer to, that the Bank of Ghana draws up, the calendar that it draws up, who endorses that quarter? Is it not the Minister of Finance who read the November budget? Is it not true that Mr. Setekpe's authorization encouraged the issuance of that bond?
We didn't have that.
Anyways,
we need to be. Why are we not telling Ghanaians the truth? Instead, we want to go and embarrass Ghanaians. This embarrassment will make sure it is heavily for you. Because you see, those in the finance industry.
This is all the time we have
and then the Bank of Ghana
today.
The Bank of Ghana.
Nana and Honorable,
telling you that
wrapping
you
up.
have failed.
Authorized.
We'll say a big thank you to you, our viewers and listeners, for making a date with us as usual, sending in your contributions and all. We thank you for that. But also, thank you to our panelists, Mr. Jackson, Honorable Kweku Rickett Hagen, Mr. Jantua, and Nana Fredra Ajimai Oforiata. We'll be back same time next week. Have a good weekend and a good week. Bye-bye.